And we're live. Kali Ilunga, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm
Are you
amazed this is
well?
actually happening after all this pre-talk.
After weeks and weeks of pushbacks and weeks of avoiding my phone calls, it's happening.
I heard your people and my people just couldn't figure it out, you know? Like,
They couldn't communicate.
all 60 of them.
Tell me, Kali,
Mm,
you're an entrepreneur, right?
right.
What does that mean?
Um, Good question. I think it means, well, let me say what it means for me. For me, it's very much about being able to take something that's just an idea and convert it into a real thing. You know, taking a thought that you put on PowerPoint and making it something that employs people or is a product or is getting advertising. And I think entrepreneurial thinking is really much has got a lot to do with the discipline of taking a concept into something that's tangible.
Mm,
And that concept doesn't even have to be yours. I don't think. It could be a concept to improve something in your department at work. It could be a concept to start a new business. It could be a concept to do a weekend project. But I think entrepreneurs are defined by entrepreneurial thinking. And for me, entrepreneurial thinking is very much about um, how dedicated and persistent and skilled am I at taking something that's airy-fairy in the air and making it something that exists in real life.
So an entrepreneur doesn't have to exist in their own enterprise. Um,
I don't think so. I get a lot of flack for this from different people. Um, but I also know that there's a lot of people that support the idea that an entrepreneur can exist in many different ways. I think the idea you have when you think of entrepreneurship is this guy who's a lone ranger and this high risk taker and anything is possible because just by himself he can make things happen. But the reality is that for anything entrepreneurial, you desperately need people. And so the advantage of being entrepreneurial within a corporate is that you have the people around you to take an entrepreneurial idea and make it real. Whether
mm,
that entrepreneurial idea is literally adding a product to your department, um, or the same rules apply if you do decide to quit your job and start from scratch. I think it's the exact same process around convincing these people that your idea is something they should invest their time and energy in, so that you can all see this entrepreneurial idea become an actual thing. So yeah, for me, I think entrepreneurs are everywhere. The classic traditional entrepreneur in our head, yes, they probably aren't in a corporate. I know I certainly couldn't do a corporate, and many people couldn't. But I don't think that precludes people within a corporate to feel like they aren't entrepreneurs.
yeah. What was your on? Were you always an entrepreneur? I mean, were you three old kids selling your toys to the other kids? What was your the start of your entrepreneurial journey? And when did you know that? Oh snap! I'm meant to start my own thing, or I'm meant to. I'm a lot. I can't be confined within a corporate. What is the spark that went off?
It's very similar to most people. I didn't start out going, wow, I want to be an entrepreneur. I started off with, wow, isn't this a cool idea? And so for me, that cool idea was a magazine for high school students in South Africa. And so in grade 9, thought, man, I go to this school that I know is so much like many other government schools, many other private schools too, were similar to my government school. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool to know of all the schools out there who's the best soccer player, who's the best cricket player, who is the best academic, what they have to say about, you know, Parktown boys playing St. Stithians, what are the captains going to say? So the idea was, let's call this thing War Cry, and let's put it out in a magazine, let's see what happens. But in grade 9, you're not thinking, and then let's put a marketing plan together and let's raise funding. You know, you're not thinking any of that. You're just thinking, this is going to be cool. I'm probably going to get girls to like me. And that's how the entrepreneurial thing started. But then you
Did the
actually,
girls like you?
That's still, that's just been the most that's been the most difficult part of this whole process. But so then you begin to do things like that, and then to sustain the momentum, someone tells you, dude, doesn't this have to be a company? Doesn't this, don't you need more people? How are you going to pay for that? Shouldn't we be in an office? And then I guess, you realize you've got a company. But funny enough, this is, I'm now 28 years old and I've had a company for 10 years. But this is the first time I've viewed myself as an entrepreneurial, as someone whose career is entrepreneurship.
Why is that?
Say that again.
Why is that?
Because now I'm not zoomed into the idea. So now I'm not married to the particular idea. I know that whether it's this idea or the next one or the one after that, that I'd like my career to be about developing ideas into sustainable companies. So it takes the pressure off the particular idea, and you can slow down and just enjoy the process and learn as much as you can, knowing that if this idea succeeds, great. If it doesn't succeed as much, fine. If it's whatever, the next idea will benefit from it. And this is the first time where finally at 28 I know what I want to do when I grow up. And it's relieving to know it's actually the exact same thing I've been doing. So, yeah, this is the first time I think entrepreneurship as a career. And I think
so. Well, continue.
No, just on that point, that I think, if you are in matric or if you are just finished varsity or thinking about it or in a job, just to realize that entrepreneurship is actually a viable career, right? I know that in particularly African families, entrepreneurship and unemployment, they're synonyms. But you can actually make a living as an entrepreneur. And the odds, particularly in a country like this, can be just as high. If someone asked me, would I rather put my CV out to 50 companies and hope I get a job, or would I rather put together a business plan and send it to 50 investors? I genuinely don't know that, the entrepreneurship thing is more risky. I think I stand just as much a chance of getting the business funded. So entrepreneurship is a viable career option. It's not just this crazy thing you do when you don't want to do your real career. There's real benefit to it.
So what did you know? Tell us about SeeSayDo.
Okay. Thanks for the free plug. SeeSayDo is just basically the idea that you have a limited amount of attention. All these advertisers are trying to get that attention. So why can't you charge for it? Why can't you get paid for the attention you're paying to ads? So a trusted brand pays us, and we give you a share when you choose to see an ad, say something about it, or do something about it. So you take your phone, it can be a feature phone, a smartphone, a dumb phone, go to SeeSayDo.mobi, you'll see a bunch of ads. You say or do something about them, you get paid. And the brand gets to know that, oh, that guy actually did see the ad, did say something, did do something, and that's why they pay. But that's the idea. We're trying to disrupt advertising. We're trying to say, particularly in emerging markets, whether you're in Sandton or in the rural Eastern Cape, the fact that you have attention is an asset, so use it. Get paid for the attention you're giving to ads.
And how far do you see this growing? Do you stay in South Africa, the rest of Africa, worldwide domination?
I mean, at the minimum, the solar system. If we could just get to the... I mean, I guess, for us, the vision has always been about BRICS in Africa, so Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and Africa. Just because the conditions are so similar. 70% youth population, a bunch of, between 10 and 20% of people's disposable income is spent on airtime and data, and we happen to pay people in airtime and data as an option when they watch ads. Youth population is mobile savvy, advertisers struggling to get to the audience. There's just a bunch of conditions that tie countries in the BRICS and countries in Africa. So hopefully South Africa is the pilot, and we rinse and repeat it in other places.
Your ideas seem to be always based on problems or opportunities you see around you. So it's, I mean, you said in high school you saw a magazine. Similarly, now you look at the youth market of which you're one, and you see, oh, we have attention. We could we could solve this. Just talk through a bit of some of your ideation process, coming up with an idea, seeing if that idea is viable. Um, is any idea viable? What is your process to find out if that's viable?
Um, so starting with a problem um, is really, really good. Lots of great ideas come from, it's irritating that I can't just do that. I've met so many people with amazing companies who just were nagged into fixing something. They're just something that bugs you constantly. That's a great place to start. But not all of us have that. Not all of us, notice problems like that or, are looking after them. And so for me, what I find is it's a combination of that, but also just being disciplined about ideation. So writing all the ideas down that you have in your shower, that you have, I can see, that you have in your shower, that you have while you're driving, that you have while you're walking, but being consistent about going, my ideas actually mean something. They matter, right? It's not just this thing I do when I'm daydreaming. And so the process of going, okay, that idea, I'm actually going to write it down. And writing the good ones, the bad ones, the terrible ones. And being disciplined and being able to say, these one or two from the conversations I've had look like they could be something. They could be something. And then to do your research around market size, I would Google, for example, investor deck. And if you Google that, you'll find templates on what is in an investor deck. And it's things like who would be your competition, how would you make money, what would be your unique selling proposition. So taking that idea you had in the shower, writing it down, and being disciplined enough to take it through that process. So at least it's something you've invested some imagination and thought and time into. And I think, the more you do that, the more intuitive ideation becomes. And the more likely it is to actually result in funding or, a partner, or because you've actually worked on this thing. And then you get more and more excited about it, you get more and more invested, and you tell a friend, like, dude, how come I haven't thought of that? That's great. And you just get this momentum, but it all starts from the discipline of going, that's my idea, it's on paper, I've done my homework, I've taken it through an investor deck, and I've put some thought into this. I'd say that's the basics of, starting a company, is just recording ideas.
Your Twitter profile,
Yes.
says completely dependent on the grace of Christ.
Yes.
How does that fit into your whole career decision and entrepreneurship, and how does it fit in? Is it I have a Bible on my desk, I treat Bible verses twice a week. Is it more than that?
I mean, it's just authentic. It's not even it's not as planned out as it may appear. All it is who I really am. And for me, the truth of the matter is that as an entrepreneur, but as a man, but I feel like, particularly as a person in entrepreneurship with its highs and lows and challenges and lawsuits and relational stress and funding matters, that for me, I've often had to turn to my faith as a source of comfort and support. And way before I was an entrepreneur, I feel like I had a relationship with Christ. And so when I put that on my Twitter profile, it's literally just because it's the most authentic thing I can write on Twitter. If Twitter bio is supposed to be about you, for me, I am dependent on the grace of Christ to get me through a lot, inside business, outside business, and so it seemed like a natural thing to put up there.
Does it? What role does it play in the? So I mean, you talked about comfort with the highs and the lows, and just but what role does it play in the day-to-day? Do you think Christian your Christian convictions play a role in the day-to-day operations? When you wake up and you arrive at your work offices, do you think your Christian convictions play a role, or is it um yeah?
I do. I think faith can be a very practical thing. And so it's practical, for instance, SeeSayDo is an advertising company. So, we stay away from overtly sexual advertising, not because
Oh really? No porn?
no porn, but, that's a whole different kind of CSA doing. But, uh, you know, that's just a small practical example of if something is overly sexual, my faith might make me, decline that ad. But on an even more practical level, when things are good, it's a good place to, faith I find keeps you grateful and
Yeah.
hopefully humble because you know that it's not just on you. You didn't just create the success, that there's a bigger story at play here and God had his hand in it. And when things are bad, it's very practical, specifically to be able to call on faith to say, help us with cash flow this month. And after a while, to be able to see story after story of those crazy prayers being answered, you begin to I've certainly begun to be quite confident that he does come through.
Mm.
So it's not a stance. It's as practical a daily thing as anything else in my life.
Cool. Just to almost wrap up, let's just talk through some of the practicals.
Mhm.
Um, Someone wants to be an entrepreneur. He talks about the ideation process. What is some of the practical advice for funding? A business needs funding. Should they rather bootstrap? Should they avoid private equity? Should they avoid angel investors? Who do they go to? Friends and family.
So I mean, typically, let's say you're just an average person, um, and you've been disciplined by this idea, and you've done your homework, and you think, okay, here, I've got my investor deck, and I think someone, if I present really well, will be open to funding this. Always start with friends and family. Now, um, you know, I understand people don't have rich people all around them. My parents are very middle class, not from a wealthy family by any means. But friends and family is still an amazing source of funding in the sense that a friend of a friend of a friend knows someone who had a boss who used to work at that company that maybe could give you that first 50,000 Rand. So I'd say, once you've developed your idea, if only for the fact that you'll be able to really get practice around pitching an idea, you should always start with friends and family,
Mm-hmm.
people you trust. But it also needs to be friends and family that aren't going to destroy your idea. Not copy it, not steal it, just destroy it. Just, Patrick, what are you thinking? That's stupid.
That thing is whack. What are you doing?
What is this?
Advertising.
Dude, those little things can absolutely deflate you. So I'd say go to friends and family. Be very open about the fact you need money, but be clear that um, you know this. I've done my homework, and this is the money I want. Can you put me in touch with anyone? But then the other thing that people don't realize is that it's an amazing time to be an entrepreneur in South Africa, particularly if you're black. Even if you're white, but it's always been good to be an entrepreneur when you're white.
If you're white, you're okay, but if you're black, ooh, why is
If
that?
not, you're black, I got news for you if you're black. you know, it's like, for example, enterprise development funding is incredible. The fact that corporates are mandated to set aside a percentage of their entire income to fund small businesses. And whether you're dealing with a BE agency or a company directly, there are people whose job it is to fund you because you are a well-researched black entrepreneur with everything but the money. And you just don't get that in countries. In fact, Inc. magazine just released a list of the 20 best cities in the world for an entrepreneur to live, and Johannesburg was in that top 20, right next to Vancouver and New York and Silicon
Oh
Valley. And
wow.
And a huge part of that was because of our access to funding. So the myth that there's no money around, especially if you're young and black and you can't, that is a myth. There are people that are there to ensure that you get funded. And so, I'd say friends and family, followed by a lot of homework around who you can pitch to from a government sort of place. But then the last thing I'd say is that what if you don't need funding? I'd say, over the last 9 or 10 years, however long I've been at this, lots of funding has come from the fact that we've sold. So that magazine I spoke to earlier, it didn't have an investor, but we would sit at the public phone in between lectures at university and sell advertising. And it wasn't a great, efficient way. Out of 200 calls, I think we only got 4. But that's how we funded the business. It was saying, buy an ad in this magazine that will come out and trust us, it'll be great. And we got lucky. And, that was a faith, that was a faith journey. And I've got lots of examples like that. We launched a mobile platform that prepared people to drive. That
was Moomba, right?
It became Moomba, and before that it was just K53 maybe or something.
Yes.
And that was funded by me presenting a PowerPoint to the CEO of McCarthy, who became a client and sponsored it. But they weren't an investor. It was to be able to look for the companies, the big companies that would directly benefit from your idea and use them to fund it without necessarily having to go out and look for investor money is always an option. So friends and family, BE stuff in the form of enterprise development funding. And lastly, can you just sell your way through it? What if you don't really need funding? Would be the options.
And forming a team, what's some practical steps? Who to choose, who not to choose?
Say that again?
Forming a team. Some practical guidelines on forming a team to work with.
Wow, I've had amazing experiences with friends and non-friends that I've hired that have become friends. I've been very fortunate overall with the people that have joined the teams. You do once in a while get a really tough experience. If you are going to go into business with a friend, because early on your friends are the people you think of, but you should be really, really careful about that. And you should try to do a lot of due diligence on their skill set, and just make sure it matches. It doesn't mean that they're a bad person if it doesn't work out or if they don't have the skill set. But sometimes there's just a clash of your expectations and theirs. So for an early entrepreneur, you're tempted to hire friends, and you can, and it can be amazing. But know that at the end of the day, it's about, is everyone doing their job, and can your friendship survive it if one person thinks the other isn't doing their job? And that's a tough thing to navigate. Once you get to the position where you can afford to hire anyone, that's still difficult, but it's a lot less difficult because it's a different process. It's purely about skill. But in the beginning, you're often enticing volunteers in a way. They're not going to get paid as much. They're taking a risk with you, and those are the trickiest parts. But I would say though that rather underhire than overhire. So if confused, always pick hiring less and hiring later as a rule.
It's easier to hire later than fire later.
It is. It is. Very smooth. I like that. That's my Twitter bio from now on. But yeah. Then you get different levels of teammates. If you're looking for a co-founder, it's very different to looking for a first employee. So a co-founder, it's such an intense relationship because you're working 24/7. You guys own the business together. It's you're both taking a lot of risk, or the 3 of you, or the 4 of you, or the 5 of you, whatever. And so finding someone like that, I think you've got to be very careful around your values. Do you have the same vision for where this thing is going? Do you have the right skill set? For your first team of employees, it's still a lot of pressure, but it's a little less demanding. It's, you do know that at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, someone can get fired. But with a business partner, if it doesn't work out, it's literally like a divorce in terms of the legalities, the financial implications, the toll emotionally. So business partners, be incredibly careful, almost like you're picking a marriage partner. First, employees, you can look at your friends, but look for skill, and be ready to know that it might not work out.
Cool. Last question. Some guy sitting there in his room in Polokwane, Limpopo, wondering, is this entrepreneurial life for me? On the one hand, he has the potential safety of a job where he's going to earn a fixed income every month. On the other hand, he has an amazing idea and he wants to bring it to fruition. What are yours for that guy?
You said he has a job already.
He has one lined up. So he has to choose between, do I pursue this idea full time or do I
The first thing I'd ask him is if he really does have to choose. Again, back to the myth of entrepreneurship. People think entrepreneurs are just like risk takers, but actually, we're incredibly risk averse. I've never taken a loan from the bank. I've never, done anything that puts me severely at risk. And so for that guy, I'd say the same thing. Companies like Amazon, the CEO Bezos did not leave his old job till Amazon could pay his salary. And so, I'd say, is it really a choice? Is there a point where you can keep your job and have some of that security so that you can save, invest a little bit in your idea, and push it through up until the point where it's absolutely critical you must move full time. And that point, for example, is often you'll be speaking to investors for your first big round of financing, and they won't touch you if you're not full time. But there's still a gap there where from idea to actual implementation. So I'd say to that guy, do you really need to choose between, how far is your idea? If your idea is well researched, maybe you've built a little product or a little prototype, you've seen traction, you've made a few sales or something, then I'd say absolutely stop messing around, just go for it full time. But if it's this thing you have on paper, I'd say take some time to develop it a little bit. Make sure you know what the next 6 months could look like. Even if you know they're going to be bad, at least you know. And take your time. You don't have to build that business next week. But at some point you will be able to. I think if it gets enough traction, you should move full time. But make the decision soberly.
Thanks for those wise words. Kali Ilunga, founder of SeeSayDo, entrepreneur, businessman, philosopher, and all other good things. Thank you very much. Thank you for this interview. For anyone who wants to follow what he's doing in his life, follow at Kali Ilunga on Twitter. He doesn't tweet much, but follow him anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.